Table 9 has my phone, the chubby waitress whispered, and the compressor nearly swallowed the rest. Frost clung to Nia Brooks's eyelashes. Her white apron was torn at the waist, a thin stripe of blood drying beneath her name tag, while her old phone continued recording under a leather booth 20 yards away. On the other end of the emergency line, Luca Moretti said nothing. Then someone outside the freezer tested the handle. 3 hours earlier, Nia had been polishing wine glasses beneath the amber chandeliers of the Marlowe, a restaurant where one dinner cost more than her monthly electric bill. She moved carefully between white tablecloths and men who never looked at her face long enough to remember it. She had learned that skill at her last hotel job, after reporting a wealthy guest who cornered a teenage busser. Human resources called Nia aggressive. 3 weeks later, her shifts disappeared. So when Vivian Shaw stopped beside her with a thin smile, Nia straightened before the woman spoke. Table 9 tonight, Vivian said. Her eyes traveled from Nia's apron to her hips. Try to give the gentleman room. Some guests become uncomfortable when service feels crowded. Nia's fingers tightened around the silver tray. Nobody laughed. That was worse. 2 servers looked down and polished glasses that were already clean. Nia lifted her chin. I know how to serve a table. Vivian's smile did not move. Confidence is useful when it understands its limits. Table 9 sat beyond the nearest camera, inside a crescent of dark leather reserved for Luca Moretti's private guests. Nia knew the men by their habits. Elias Cole wanted his bourbon without ice. Grant Mercer, Luca's security chief, never allowed anyone behind his right shoulder. Tonight, however, Grant kept looking toward the kitchen. At 9:57, while Nia poured wine, a stranger placed a black key card beside Grant's glass. Grant covered it with 2 fingers. 11:05, the stranger murmured. The tunnel stays clean. Nia kept pouring. The wine climbed too high in the crystal glass. A trembling red line one breath from spilling. Grant looked up. Something wrong? No, sir. She smiled because waitresses were paid to smile even when danger had just spoken in code. On the return trip, she passed table 9 with a basket of bread. Her old phone was already recording inside her apron pocket. Vivian intercepted her near the service station. Phones are not permitted on the floor. Her voice was soft enough to sound protective, especially for employees who may misunderstand private conversations. Nia felt the old hotel conference room close around her, the HR director folding her hands, explaining that truth spoken by the wrong woman became disruption. She lowered her eyes. I was checking the time. Of course you were. Vivian reached for the apron pocket. Nia moved first. She let a wine glass slip from her tray. It shattered against the floor, and every face turned toward the sound. In that single bright burst of crystal, she crouched, slid the phone beneath the brass vent of table 9, and pushed it deep behind the leather booth. Grant stood. Silence spread across the dining room. Not empty silence. Hunting silence. Where is it? He asked. Nia rose with a shard pressed into her palm. Blood ran between her fingers. Where is what? Vivian's expression remained kind. Nia, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Nia backed through the kitchen while Grant's men separated without being told. One blocked the rear exit. Another checked the staff lockers. The freezer was the only door still open. She stepped inside, pulled it shut, and reached for the interior latch. It moved once. Then metal scraped outside. Someone had dropped the maintenance bar into place. By the time Nia found the old intercom near the floor, her fingertips had begun to numb. She dialed the private emergency number she had memorized before Vivian removed the safety sheet from the kitchen wall. Luca answered on the 4th ring. Moretti. Table 9 has my phone. A pause. Cold. Measuring. Who gave you this number? Nobody. Nia pressed her bleeding palm against the steel floor. I remembered it. Luca did not tell her he believed her. He knew the freezer intercom had supposedly been disconnected 6 months earlier. He also knew table 9 was a blind spot Grant alone controlled. Stay awake, he said. Then, the line died. 12 minutes later, Luca Moretti entered the kitchen with 4 men who did not belong to restaurant security. He looked once at Vivian, once at Grant, and then at the freezer door. Fresh black tape covered the emergency release, and stamped across the tape was the silver crest of Moretti Security. The silver crest should have made the tape look official. Instead, it made Luca Moretti go still. He did not touch it. He took out his phone, photographed the freezer door, the maintenance bar, and the strip of black tape before looking at Grant. Who authorized this? His voice was quiet enough that the dishwasher kept running behind them, plates knocking together beneath the hiss of hot water. Grant glanced at the crest as if seeing it for the first time. Standard safety measure. The release has been malfunctioning. Luca's eyes remained on him for 1 second too long. Cut it. One of Luca's men sliced through the tape. When the door opened, Nia did not step out. She folded forward onto her hands, her torn apron stiff with frost, one palm slick with blood. A kitchen worker gasped. Nobody else moved. Luca crouched, but did not grab her. Can you hear me? Nia lifted her head. Her lips had lost their color. My phone. Later. No. The word barely carried, but it stopped him. Call it before they move it. Vivian appeared with a folded tablecloth and the expression of a woman arriving to clean up someone else's embarrassment. She draped the cloth around Nia's shoulders. Poor thing. She's been under a great deal of stress. Nia flinched at the softness of her voice. Vivian turned to Luca. We found her stealing from a donor. When security approached, she panicked and locked herself inside. Grant held up a brown leather wallet. It was in her apron. The room changed around that small object. Servers who had been staring at Nia now looked away. A bartender slowly set down the coffee he had been holding. The smell of it, burned, cold, forgotten, hung beneath the freezer air. Vivian knelt beside Nia with a clipboard. No one wants this to become worse than it already is. Sign the incident statement, and we can arrange transportation home. Her smile was warm. Her eyes were not. We'll describe it as confusion caused by exhaustion. Nia stared at the pen. 2 years earlier, another woman behind another desk had offered her the same kindness. Sign here. Admit you misunderstood. Protect your future. Her bleeding fingers closed around the pen. Then she laid it across the clipboard without signing. Call my phone. Vivian's smile thinned. Nia, this is not the time to perform. Luca looked at the statement. What time was this written? Just now, Vivian answered. He tilted the page toward the light. The printer stamp at the bottom read 10:14 p.m. Nia's call from the freezer had reached him at 10:18. Luca said nothing. Silence pressed harder than accusation. Grant stepped in smoothly. The system auto-populates templates. Vivian probably opened the report when the disturbance began. Probably, Luca repeated. He photographed the timestamp. Then he looked at the wallet. Where was it found? Her apron, Vivian said. Her locker, Grant answered at the same moment. Somewhere near the dining room. The front bell chimed as another guest entered, unaware that the kitchen had stopped breathing. Nia reached for the wallet, but Luca moved it beyond her fingers. Don't touch it. I wasn't going to. She nodded toward its polished surface. Look at the leather. The wallet was dry. Not merely dry, warm and soft from someone's pocket. Nia's apron crackled when she shifted, the fabric wet with melting frost. Luca turned the wallet over. Inside was a gold membership card bearing the name Charles Venn. Nia swallowed against the pain in her throat. That wallet has been in lost and found since October. Vivian's face did not change. You must be mistaken. I logged it myself. Table 12. October 9th. Coffee receipt for 2 tucked inside. Luca opened the wallet. A faded receipt slid into his palm. 2 coffees. October 9th. Table 12. He read the guest's name again, then looked toward the dining room. Where is Mr. Venn tonight? No one answered. Nia pulled the tablecloth tighter around her shoulders. He died 3 months ago. Luca lowered his eyes to the incident report. Beneath the line accusing Nia of stealing the wallet was Charles Venn's signature, dated tonight. Luca held the dead man's signature beneath the kitchen light. The ink was too dark, too clean, still sitting on top of the paper instead of sinking into it. Vivian gave a small, embarrassed laugh. That is obviously a clerical error. The donor profile must have populated from an archived account. A dead man filed a complaint tonight, Lucas said. His voice never rose. That made 3 people near the dish station stop pretending to work. Grant stepped closer, careful and composed. We can sort out the paperwork after Ms. Brooks is evaluated. She has been locked in sub-zero temperatures. Confusion is expected. Nia pulled the tablecloth tighter around herself. Her teeth clicked once before she forced them still. I'm not confused. Vivian's eyes softened in a way that made the words colder. No one is accusing you of being dishonest, Nia, but fear can make memories feel more certain than they are. The old wound opened exactly where Vivian intended. Nia remembered the hotel attorney saying trauma changes perception while sliding a resignation agreement across a conference table. She had signed then because rent was due and her mother needed medication. Tonight, she looked at the forged signature and kept both hands visible. Asked them where the wallet was found again. Luca turned to Vivian. Where? In her apron pocket. He looked at Grant. And you? Grant paused only half a second. A security officer recovered it near her locker. Vivian may have misunderstood. Which officer? I'll get the name. Grant reached for his phone. Luca's hand closed over it before he could unlock the screen. Not fast. Not violent. Final. Later. Silence settled over the kitchen, broken only by water striking stainless steel and the low mechanical breathing of the freezer. Luca lifted Nia's apron pocket with two gloved fingers. The cloth was soaked through, edged with white frost, and stiff enough to hold its shape. Then he touched the leather wallet. Still warm. He looked at Nia differently. Not with trust. Not yet. But as though she had moved from the edge of the room into focus. How long were you inside? 9 minutes before. I reached the intercom. 12 more before you came. You counted. The compressor shuts off every 3 minutes. Grant's mouth tightened. Luca noticed. Show me the footage. They moved to the security room behind the manager's office. Nia walked without help, though each step made pain climb through her calves. Vivian stayed beside her, one hand hovering near Nia's elbow for the benefit of anyone watching. You don't need to put yourself through this, she murmured. We can call this a misunderstanding. Nia stopped. You already called it theft. Vivian's hand fell. On the monitor, grainy footage showed Nia backing through the kitchen, looking over her shoulder, then pulling open the freezer door and stepping inside. She closed it herself. Grant folded his arms. There. No one forced her. Luca watched the clip again. Then a third time. Run the exterior angle. That camera was undergoing maintenance. Interior hallway. Signal loss. Loading dock. Grant's answer came slower. Same network. 3 cameras. 1 missing window. 10 minutes. Luca leaned closer to the screen. Freeze at 10 hours 16 minutes and 8 seconds. The image stopped as the steel freezer door swung shut. Nia pointed at the reflection, not the door. There. A blurred shape crossed the polished metal. Dark suit. Raised hand. Something silver at the wrist. Grant reached toward the controls. Compression artifact. Nia caught his sleeve before he could advance the frame. Every guard in the room moved. She released him immediately, but her eyes stayed on the screen. Artifacts don't cast shadows. Luca enlarged the image. The figure remained faceless, distorted by the curved steel, but the raised hand was clear enough now. Between 2 fingers was a second black key card. Not the one Nia had seen at table 9. This one carried a white kitchen stripe. Luca looked toward Grant's belt, where one identical card was clipped beside his gun. Then he looked back at the frozen image. The timestamp read 10 hours 16 minutes and 8 seconds. Grant's access log, displayed in the corner of the screen, claimed his card had been used on the opposite side of the building at exactly the same second. The duplicated timestamp sat between them like a loaded weapon. Grant recovered first. Cloned credentials happen, he said. The system flags a card number, not the hand holding it. His tone was calm, almost reassuring, the voice of a man explaining weather to people who had mistaken thunder for gunfire. Vivian folded the incident report against her clipboard. And Nia has already admitted she entered the freezer voluntarily. We should be careful not to turn a frightened employee's assumptions into accusations against people who have protected this family for years. Protected this family. The words were aimed at Luca, but Vivian's eyes rested on Nia. Nia understood the message. Grant belonged here. She did not. Luca's gaze moved from the frozen reflection to Nia's face. Your phone, he said. Where exactly? Table 9. Behind the brass vent under the left side of the booth. Grant gave a restrained sigh. That area has been searched. By your men, Nia said. The room went quiet. Vivian's eyebrows lifted, not in anger but in polished disappointment. Nia, gratitude would serve you better than hostility right now. Mr. Mercer's team opened that freezer. They may have saved your life. Nia looked down at the name tag hanging crooked from her torn apron. The pin had bent when she fell. She straightened it with numb fingers until Nia Brooks sat level again. Mr. Moretti's men opened it. The correction was soft. It still cut. Luca watched Grant instead of her. Bring everyone to the dining room. 5 minutes later, the charity guests had been gathered beneath the chandeliers, their diamonds and dark suits reflecting in the windows. The string quartet had stopped mid-song. A board member whispered that the interruption was becoming embarrassing. Another asked whether the employee could be moved somewhere private. Nia stood beside table 9 wrapped in a silver thermal blanket. Her size and uniform made painfully visible among women in narrow gowns and men who carried themselves as if the room had been built to fit them. Vivian stepped close enough for only Nia to hear. You are asking powerful people to tolerate a spectacle. When this is over, they will remember who caused it. Nia kept her eyes on the brass vent. Then, they'll remember me. Luca handed her his phone. Call it. A charity attorney objected immediately. Mr. Moretti, with respect, a personal device in a restricted room raises serious privacy issues. We should involve counsel before conducting any search based solely on an employee's claim. Luca looked at him. You are counsel. The man's mouth closed. Nia entered her number. The first ring sounded faintly beneath the booth. On the second, Grant's jaw tightened. On the third, one of his guards crouched and reached under the table. Don't, Lucas said. The guard froze with his hand inches from the vent. Nia stepped forward. Her knees still trembled, but she knelt without asking for help and pointed beneath the brass lip. Screen down. 3 inches past the screw. The phone lay exactly there, its cracked glass glowing blue in the darkness. Grant's expression did not change. She served this table. She could have planted it at any time. Yes, Lucas said. She could have. He did not absolve her. That restraint unsettled Grant more than anger would have. A technician placed the phone in a clear evidence sleeve. The recording icon still pulsed, but the file would not open. Vivian exhaled, just slightly. Then perhaps we can end this before more reputations are damaged. Nia leaned closer to the screen. A notification sat above the locked file. Upload failed at 10:12 p.m. Network credentials changed. She looked toward the private router cabinet behind table 9. Only 3 people had access to it. Grant smiled as though the problem had resolved itself. Then the phone lit again with a delayed photograph from 10:11. A blurred wine bucket, a black key card, and Grant's signet ring reflected clearly enough to identify. The photograph held the room more effectively than a gunshot. Grant's signet ring caught the light in the wine bucket's curved reflection, the black key card pinched between 2 fingers. He studied the image, then gave a small, almost sympathetic smile. A reflection is not a confession. Luca did not answer. He looked at Nia's phone inside the evidence sleeve, then at the blood drying along the torn edge of her apron. Can the audio be recovered? The technician nodded. A local cache. Maybe 3 minutes. Vivian stepped forward. Before we play anything, Mr. Moretti, consider the privacy implications. Nia recorded donors without consent. Whatever happened tonight, that decision was inappropriate. Her voice was gentle, reasonable, designed to make Nia feel rude for surviving. We could handle this internally. Quietly, Nia pulled the thermal blanket tighter around her shoulders. Quietly is how you put me in the freezer. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Luca turned to the technician. Recover it. They moved into the private wine room, where dark bottles rested behind glass and the air smelled of cedar, cork, and money. Grant remained near the door. Vivian stood beside him with her clipboard pressed flat against her ribs. The technician connected the phone to an isolated laptop. A waveform appeared. 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Luca looked at Nia. Do you want them outside? For 1 second, she almost said yes. Then she remembered the dining room laughter, soft and hidden inside crystal glasses. She remembered Vivian looking at her body before assigning table 9, as if the size of a woman could be entered beside a reservation number. No, Nia said. They heard it the first time. The audio began with silverware touching china. Then Vivian's voice, smooth as polished stone. VIP guests pay for discretion, Nia. That includes staff who know how not to fill a room. A man asked whether the chair should be moved farther back so she could pass. Someone chuckled into a drink. Nia kept her eyes on the laptop. Her bandaged palm began bleeding through the gauze, a dark red flower opening between her fingers. Grant spoke from the doorway. Crude remarks are regrettable. They are not evidence of conspiracy. The recording continued. Nia's own voice asked, why does he have a convoy card? A chair scraped hard. Vivian told her to hand over the phone. Then Grant's voice entered, lower than the others. Put her somewhere cold until this is over. The waveform stopped. The silence afterward was worse because everyone knew the sentence had not ended. Luca looked at Grant. What was over? Grant's expression did not break. The disturbance. She was agitated. We needed to remove her from the guests. You remove employees by locking them in freezers? I gave no such order. Your voice did. My words were interpreted badly. Vivian seized the opening. Exactly. Nia had already become emotional. Instructions spoken under pressure can sound harsher than intended. Nia reached beneath the thermal blanket and took out a folded receipt she had hidden inside the waistband of her uniform before entering the freezer. The paper was damp, softened by sweat and cold, but the ink remained. This was under Grant's plate. She placed it on the table herself. The merchant copy showed Table 9, for guests, 1 pair tart ordered and voided. At the bottom, written in block letters, were 3 marks. HD, 1105. Lucas stared at them longer than he had stared at the photograph. His convoy was scheduled to enter Harbor Tunnel at 11:05. Grant gave a quiet laugh. House tab. 11:05 was the time dessert service closed. Nia shook her head. Dessert service closes at 11:30. Vivian's fingers tightened around the clipboard. Luca noticed. How do you know this receipt matters? He asked. Nia met his eyes. Because they never eat the pear tart. They order it every time the cameras go dark. Grant's phone vibrated once inside Luca's hand. A message flashed across the locked screen before disappearing. Route confirmed. Harbor Tunnel. 11:05. Luca raised his eyes to the man who had stood beside him for 12 years. You said your phone was disconnected from operations tonight. Grant's face did not change. Disconnected from the restaurant network, he said. Not from my private line. Luca kept the phone in his hand. The message had already vanished, but he had read enough. Harbor Tunnel. 11:05. Who sent it? Grant gave the smallest shrug. Operations. Which operator? I'll have to check. Luca looked at him for a long moment, then set the phone face down on the wine room table. Do that. The order sounded ordinary. That was what made Vivian glance at Grant. Luca turned to the technician. Make 3 copies of the audio. 1 stays with Ms. Brooks. Nia's eyes lifted. Vivian stepped in smoothly. Surely the company should retain the original. For everyone's protection. It's her phone, Lucas said. Her evidence. Nia accepted the device with both hands. The cracked screen was warm now, almost painfully warm against fingers that still felt frozen from the inside. What do you want? Luca asked her. Vivian answered before Nia could. Compensation can be arranged. Paid leave, medical care, perhaps a confidentiality agreement while we review. I didn't ask you. Luca's voice stayed low. Vivian went silent. Nia swallowed. She could hear rain ticking against the narrow wine room window, hear the dishwasher running beyond the wall, hear a spoon strike the rim of a coffee cup twice before someone remembered not to make noise. I don't want money for forgetting, she said. I want my name taken off that report. I want the people on tonight's shift paid what they earned. And I want the truth about Table 9 written down before somebody decides I was confused. Luca studied her. Anything else? Yes. She looked toward Vivian. Stop using my old complaint like it proves I lie. That changed something in his expression. Not softness. Direction. He turned to one of the men he had brought with him. Call outside counsel. Not Cole. Elias Cole, the lawyer from Table 9, stood very still near the door. Pull the raw camera feed from the charity live stream. Luca continued. Not restaurant security. Pull the convoy keycard log, the point of sale void history, the print queue from Vivian's office, and every personnel file opened under Nia Brooks in the last 30 days. Grant smiled faintly. You're building a case from a frozen employee, a blurry photograph, and a misunderstood note on a receipt. Luca looked at him. I'm checking whether they agree. He did not accuse. He did not threaten. He made the room colder by refusing to argue. 20 minutes later, the first files arrived. On the restaurant's muted television, the charity logo glowed blue above smiling footage of donors raising glasses. In the wine room, Luca compared timestamps. The raw live stream showed the polished freezer door from an angle Grant's system had missed. At 10:16, Vivian appeared in the reflection and lowered the maintenance bar with both hands. The keycard log showed a duplicate convoy credential created at 9:52 using Grant's administrator code. The print queue revealed a severance agreement bearing Nia's name, prepared 48 hours earlier. It described a psychological episode involving theft, unauthorized recording, and self-endangerment. At the bottom waited a blank line for her signature. Attached behind it was the complaint from her old hotel, the one she had filed to protect a teenage busser. Luca's jaw tightened once. Who requested this file? The technician enlarged the access record. Elias Cole's credentials. Vivian's printer. Grant's approval. Nia stared at the pages. They had not decided what to say after she found the key card. They had decided what she would become before she ever walked to table 9. They picked me, she whispered. Luca looked at the severance agreement, then at the woman in the thermal blanket, bleeding through her bandage while still protecting the truth better than any man in his security division. For 12 years, he had trusted Grant to tell him where danger was. Tonight, he finally understood that Grant had not been guarding the blind spots. He had been creating them. Luca did not tell Grant what he had found. He returned to the dining room with the severance agreement folded inside his jacket and the same expression he wore when ordering coffee. Nia followed in the thermal blanket, her old phone sealed in a clear evidence sleeve against her chest. The chandeliers still burned above table 9. 4 untouched wine glasses stood in a perfect row, each one catching the light like a blade. Grant watched them approach. Did outside counsel confirm the situation? He asked. Not yet, Lucas said. Then perhaps we should remove Ms. Brooks before the guests begin speculating. Vivian's smile returned. For her dignity, of course. Nia looked at the pear tart sitting untouched in the center of the table. The sugar glaze had hardened. No fork had touched it. She remembered the kitchen clock each time one had been sent back. 10:14, 10:42, 11:06. Always ordered. Never eaten. Void another one, she said. Vivian turned toward her. Excuse me. Nia kept her voice even. Send a pear tart to table 9. Then voided at 10:58. Grant's eyes moved to the wall clock before he could stop them. Lucas saw. Why, he asked. Because they used the void time, not the dessert. Nia pointed toward the service terminal. When the receipt disappears, somebody knows the route changed. Grant gave a quiet laugh. You are suggesting a criminal network communicates through pastry. No, Nia said. Through people who think waitresses only carry plates. Silence spread across the table. Luca looked at the floor manager. Do it. At 10:58, the receipt printed, then vanished from the point-of-sale screen. A tiny green light blinked inside the router cabinet. Grant's phone vibrated once against the table. He did not touch it. Luca did not look at the phone. He looked at Grant's hand, which had stopped halfway toward his wine glass. Lakeshore, Luca said casually. We'll use it tonight. Grant nodded too quickly. Safer than the tunnel. Only Grant had been given that route. Elias Cole, seated 2 chairs away, had been told the convoy would use Wacker Drive. Vivian had been told it would remain underground until morning. 3 lies, 3 doors, 1 trap. Nia stood beside the service station with a damp towel wrapped around her injured palm. She was not acting like a spy. She was doing what she had always done, watching who ordered what, who touched which glass, who looked at the clock before pretending not to care. 6 minutes passed. Rain tapped the tall windows. A spoon struck porcelain in the kitchen. Somewhere behind the bar, ice settled inside a metal bin. Then Lucas' secure phone lit up. One of his men had sent a traffic camera image. A box truck had blocked Lakeshore Drive. 2 men wearing counterfeit police jackets were waiting beside an unmarked sedan. One carried a security badge from a shell company registered to Grant's brother-in-law. Luca read the message once and locked the screen. Grant leaned back. Problem. Traffic, Lucas said. Nia's old phone suddenly chimed inside the evidence sleeve. The upload bar, frozen for nearly an hour, had begun moving. Grant had used the private terminal to check the false dessert signal, reconnecting the restaurant to the old network credentials. The final audio file was climbing into the cloud 1% at a time. Grant saw it. For the first time, the control left his face. His hand moved toward the router cabinet. Luca placed 2 fingers on the table. Sit. Grant stopped. The word had been quiet, almost polite, but every guard in the room shifted toward him. The upload reached 63%. Vivian stepped between Nia and the phone. This has gone far enough. Nia, whatever you think you heard, powerful men will not allow a server to dismantle their lives over wounded feelings. Nia adjusted her crooked name tag until it sat straight over her heart. Then they should have chosen someone who forgets table numbers. The upload reached 100%. Grant looked past her at Luca, then at the men now standing behind Nia instead of behind him. Only then did he understand that the waitress he had selected because no one would believe her was no longer standing alone. Grant understood too late that Luca's silence had changed sides. Vivian moved first. She stepped toward the charity stage, lifted the wireless microphone, and turned her practiced smile toward the donors, board members, reporters, and city officials still gathered beneath the chandeliers. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the disruption. One of our employees has experienced a serious emotional episode, and Mr. Moretti is taking every precaution to ensure her well-being. Her voice was warm enough to sound merciful. Behind her, the gala screen still displayed the words, "Every employee deserves a voice." For transparency, Vivian continued, security footage will show that Ms. Brooks entered the freezer voluntarily. The edited clip appeared above table 9. Nia watched herself run through the kitchen, pull open the steel door, and disappear inside. The video ended before the maintenance bar dropped. A few donors shifted uncomfortably. One woman whispered that Nia should not be forced to remain in public. A board member suggested calling a psychiatric unit. Vivian had turned humiliation into concern so smoothly that the room almost thanked her for it. Nia stepped forward before Luca could speak. The thermal blanket was gone. Her apron remained torn. The blood at her waist dried dark against the white fabric. She placed her cracked phone at the center of table 9. "Where did you find the wallet?" she asked. Vivian's smile tightened. "In your apron." "And when did you write the report?" "After the incident." Nia nodded toward the screen. The technician replaced the edited video with the printer record, 10:14 p.m. Then came the intercom log, 10:18. Then the raw livestream image of Vivian lowering the maintenance bar across the freezer door. No one spoke. Nia placed the brown wallet beside the phone, still sealed in its evidence bag. "The man whose name is on this died 3 months ago." Charles Venn's forged signature appeared 10 feet high behind Vivian. The silence became physical. Grant rose slowly. "These fragments prove misconduct," he said. "Not a conspiracy." His composure had returned, but his right hand remained flat against the table as if he needed the wood to steady him. Nia slid the pear tart receipt toward Luca. "HD, 1105. The screen changed again. Grant's duplicated keycard log. The counterfeit police jackets on Lakeshore Drive. The burner message confirming the false route. The severance contract prepared 2 days before Nia ever reached table 9. Attached to it was the old complaint that had cost her another job. Luca read the first paragraph, then the second. He saw his company letterhead, his legal department, his security authorization, his name used as shelter for men who had selected a woman because poverty made her easy to threaten and prejudice made her easy to disbelieve. For the first time that night, his face lost color. He did not look at Grant. He looked at Nia's bandaged hand, at the apron she had been forced to wear while men planned to bury her beneath a lie, and then at the restaurant he owned. "Under my roof," he said quietly. It was not a question. Nia touched the old phone. "There's more." Grant moved toward her. 2 of Luca's men blocked him without drawing weapons. Nia pressed play. The final 14 seconds filled the dining room. Grant's recorded voice came through clear and unhurried. "Use her old file. No one believes the fat waitress. After the tunnel, put the card in her locker." Luca closed his eyes. Not for long. Just long enough to understand that the man who had stood beside him for 12 years had built his betrayal on the certainty that Luca would never truly see a woman like Nia Brooks. Vivian reached for the microphone. "Nia, please. You do not want to destroy lives over language spoken under pressure." Nia turned to her. "I am not destroying you." Her voice did not shake. "I am refusing to disappear so you can survive what you did." Grant lunged for the phone. Nia did not step back. "That isn't the only copy." The technician raised a sealed forensic drive. Outside counsel raised another. The charity livestream light remained red. Every denial had already gone public. Luca removed the Moretti signet ring from his hand and placed it beside Grant's duplicated keycard. The small click against the table sounded final. Then he looked at the lawyer from table 9. "Call the district attorney." The district attorney arrived before midnight, but justice did not arrive all at once. It came in sealed evidence bags, subpoenas, payroll audits, and 12-hour interviews beneath fluorescent lights. Grant Mercer was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful imprisonment, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Vivian Shaw accepted a plea after investigators uncovered 3 years of stolen tips, altered shift logs, and retaliation complaints buried under the phrase employee wellness. Elias Cole lost his license before the criminal case reached trial. The charity board removed every Moretti representative until an independent investigation was complete, and Luca did not object. "Open everything," he told the auditors, "especially what carries my name." The first check Nia received was not from Luca. It came from a court-supervised restitution fund containing every dollar taken from the restaurant staff, with interest. Her personnel record was corrected in writing. The theft allegation disappeared. The words unstable and confrontational were removed. In their place, the file identified Nia Brooks as the primary witness whose evidence prevented an attempted killing and exposed systematic wage theft. The hotel that had fired her reopened the complaint involving the teenage busser. Their attorney offered a private settlement. Nia refused the confidentiality clause. The apology was read publicly instead. Luca offered her a management title, an office, and a salary large enough to change her life in one afternoon. Nia sat across from him in the empty dining room and placed the contract back on table 9. "I don't want a position that exists because you feel guilty." Luca did not defend himself. "What do you want?" "A system that works when you're not in the room." So she gave him a list. An outside reporting hotline, independent payroll audits, elected employee representatives, no camera blind spots for VIP tables, 2-person review of every disciplinary action, freezer doors with dual emergency releases and alarms connected to the fire panel, paid medical leave that did not require a manager's permission. Lucas signed each demand. Then he signed another document giving the employee council legal authority to enforce them. He did not call it generosity. He called it correction. 6 months later, the Marlowe reopened beneath brighter lights. Table 9 was no longer hidden behind a crescent of shadow. The brass vent had been removed. A visible camera faced the booth, its small red lights steady and impossible to silence without triggering an outside alert. Nia returned 2 nights a week because she still loved the rhythm of service. The clean weight of a tray balanced on one palm, the soft click of glass against linen, the moment a tired person tasted something warm and stopped looking tired. The rest of the week, she attended hospitality management classes paid for through the legal settlement, not Luca's pocket. The staff elected her chair of the new safety council. On the first training day, the freezer compressor started behind her. Her hands trembled. She did not hide them. "Stop," she said. The technician stopped immediately. No one called her difficult. No one told her fear had distorted the moment. They waited until she was ready. That evening, after the final table left, Nia placed her old phone in the center of table 9. The screen was still cracked. She had replaced the battery but kept the glass exactly as it was. She pressed record and spoke the first message for the employee hotline. "My name is Nia Brooks. You do not need permission from the person hurting you to tell the truth." Lucas stood near the kitchen entrance, watching without interrupting. He no longer entered rooms assuming power made him the first person worth hearing. When Nia finished, he approached the table but did not pull out the chair. "May I sit?" "After I clock out." He waited. 10 minutes later, she returned without the apron, carrying 2 cups of fresh coffee. She handed him one and sat across from him where Grant had once planned her disappearance. The phone between them rang. A young woman whispered, "I don't know if this counts." Nia answered before the second ring. "Tell me anyway." Luca lowered his eyes to the untouched coffee and said nothing, because for once silence was not being used to erase a woman. It was making room for her voice.